Why goals fail and systems win. Most people believe change is about setting better goals. They believe that if the goal is clear enough, big enough, or painful enough, action will follow. This belief is comforting because it gives direction. It creates hope. It feels like progress. But in reality, goals are one of the weakest tools for long-term change. Goals define outcomes. Systems define processes. And outcomes are controlled by processes, not intentions. This distinction is subtle but decisive. A goal is something you want to achieve. A system is what you do repeatedly to get there. When people fail to change, it is rarely because their goals were unclear. It is because their systems were weak or non-existent. Most people already know what they want. They want to lose weight, build discipline, read more, earn more, focus better, or improve their lives. The problem is not a lack of desire. The problem is what happens on ordinary days when motivation is low and life is busy. Goals only matter at the moment of success or failure. Systems matter every single day. This is why focusing on goals creates a dangerous illusion. It makes people believe that progress is something that happens in the future. It postpones satisfaction. It turns daily action into a means to an end rather than an end in itself. When the goal becomes the primary focus, people unconsciously treat the present as a sacrifice. They endure today in exchange for a better tomorrow. This mindset is unsustainable. Eventually, resistance builds. Fatigue sets in. And behavior collapses. Another flaw of goal-based thinking is that it creates a success-failure binary. Either you hit the goal or you don't. If you succeed, you feel temporary relief. If you fail, you feel disappointment and shame. In both cases, the process is ignored. This emotional volatility destabilizes consistency. People either over-celebrate success and stop, or over-criticize failure and quit. The system never improves. Systems, on the other hand, are emotionally neutral. They do not demand perfection. They reward repetition. They make progress visible even when outcomes are delayed. A system is successful if it is followed, not if it produces immediate results. This reframes progress from achievement to adherence. This reframing is powerful. It shifts attention from what you get to what you do. It places control back in the present moment. It reduces anxiety because the measure of success is within reach every day. Goals are often motivating at the beginning. But motivation is unreliable. Systems are built for days when motivation is absent. This is why people with similar goals achieve very different outcomes. Two people may want the same result, but the one with the better system wins. Not because they want it more, but because their environment, routines, and behaviors make success more likely. Goals do not differentiate winners from losers. Systems do. Another overlooked problem with goals is that they create temporary change. Once the goal is achieved, effort stops. The behavior that produced success is abandoned. This is why people often regress after achieving a goal. They return to old patterns because the system was never designed to sustain the result. This is especially common in habit-related goals. Someone diets to lose weight, reaches the target, and then returns to old eating habits. The goal is achieved, but the system is unchanged. Systems prevent this regression. They focus on lifestyle rather than milestones. They make the behavior the reward, not the result. Systems also reduce the cognitive load of decision-making. When behavior is systematized, it requires less thought. Less thought means less resistance. Less resistance means higher consistency. This is why routines are powerful. They eliminate the need to decide. They turn intention into structure. Without systems, goals rely on willpower. And willpower is a finite resource. It fluctuates with stress, sleep, emotions, and energy. Designing a system is essentially designing a way to protect behavior from these fluctuations. Systems account for human weakness. Goals assume human strength. This is a critical difference. Systems work with reality. Goals often work against it. Another reason goals fail is that they focus on the destination instead of the direction. Direction determines trajectory. Trajectory determines outcome. A small improvement in direction, sustained over time, produces massive change. Systems optimize direction. Goals only mark destinations. This is why small, consistent actions outperform ambitious but irregular efforts. Systems compound. Goals expire. Understanding this insight changes how you approach every area of life. It shifts focus from chasing results to building structures. From wanting change to designing change. And once systems are in place, progress becomes inevitable. Not because of effort, but because of design. This is the foundation of lasting habits. Not what you want to achieve, but how you organize your life to make achievement unavoidable. When people rely on goals, they unknowingly place pressure on a future moment. That future moment becomes the justification for present struggle. The logic sounds reasonable: suffer now, enjoy later. But this logic quietly trains the mind to resist the present. The brain does not experience the future. It only experiences now. When the present is repeatedly framed as something to endure, resistance becomes automatic. Over time, the mind associates the habit with discomfort rather than progress. This is why people often feel relief when they abandon a goal. The pressure disappears. The internal tension resolves. The relief is mistaken for failure, but it is actually the mind escaping an unsustainable framework. Systems remove this pressure. They anchor attention in the present. Instead of asking, "Am I closer to my goal?" the question becomes, "Did I follow my system today?" This shift changes the emotional experience of effort. Following a system feels complete. Chasing a goal feels endless. Another critical flaw of goal-driven change is that it narrows focus too much. People become obsessed with a single outcome and ignore the broader context. They optimize one metric while damaging others. For example, someone focused on productivity goals may sacrifice sleep, health, or relationships. Someone focused on fitness goals may develop unhealthy rigidity. The goal dominates decision-making, even when it conflicts with long-term well-being. Systems encourage balance. A well-designed system accounts for sustainability. It respects human limits. It integrates habits into life instead of overpowering it. This is why systems last while goals burn out. There is also a timing problem with goals. Goals operate on delayed gratification. The reward is distant. The cost is immediate. The brain is not wired to handle this imbalance well. Systems shorten the reward loop. The act of showing up becomes the reward. Completion replaces achievement. Consistency replaces intensity. This does not mean systems ignore results. Results still matter. But they become a byproduct, not the driver. When results are the driver, people become outcome dependent. When systems are the driver, people become process dependent. Process dependency is stable. Outcome dependency is fragile. Another issue with goals is comparison. Goals invite comparison with others. Who reached it faster? Who achieved more? Who failed? This comparison erodes motivation and introduces anxiety. Systems are personal. They are measured internally. They reduce the urge to compare because success is defined by adherence, not ranking. This is especially important in habit formation. Habits grow best in low-pressure environments. Comparison introduces pressure. Systems also handle variability better than goals. Life is unpredictable. Energy fluctuates. Circumstances change. Goals often break under variability. Systems adapt. A good system has flexible intensity. On high-energy days, you do more. On low-energy days, you do less. But you never do nothing. The system remains intact. This flexibility protects identity. It prevents the all-or-nothing mindset that destroys consistency. Goals encourage extremes. Systems encourage continuity. Another reason systems win is that they create feedback loops. Each repetition provides information. What worked? What didn't? What needs adjustment? Systems evolve. Goals remain static. This adaptability is crucial. No plan survives contact with reality unchanged. Systems that incorporate feedback improve over time. Goals that ignore feedback become outdated. People who succeed long-term are not better planners. They are better adjusters. Systems also reduce emotional volatility. With goals, emotions swing wildly based on progress. With systems, emotions stabilize because success is frequent and measurable. This emotional stability is underrated. It protects mental energy. It prevents burnout. It allows habits to coexist with other life demands. Another hidden advantage of systems is that they decentralize effort. Instead of relying on motivation spikes, they distribute effort evenly. This makes consistency manageable. Most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. Systems correct this distortion. They emphasize accumulation. Accumulation is slow but unstoppable. Goals are visible. Systems are invisible. This invisibility makes systems easy to ignore. But it is also what makes them powerful. They operate quietly, beneath awareness, shaping behavior without constant effort. This is why people often attribute success to talent or luck. They see outcomes, not systems. Designing systems requires humility. It requires accepting that motivation is unreliable and willpower is limited. It requires designing around weakness rather than denying it. This acceptance is not pessimism. It is realism. And realism produces results. Systems turn change from a battle into a process. From a struggle into a structure. From a wish into a routine. Once systems are in place, progress no longer depends on how you feel. It depends on what you've built. And what you build determines how far you go. The final reason systems outperform goals is the most important one. Systems shape identity over time, while goals only chase outcomes. When you commit to a system, you are not just trying to achieve something. You are practicing becoming someone. Goals ask, what do I want? Systems ask, what kind of person do I want to be consistent as? This distinction changes how effort feels. Goals create pressure because they demand results. Systems create confidence because they reinforce reliability. Each day you follow a system, you prove something to yourself. That proof compounds. Confidence is not built by achieving goals. It is built by keeping promises to yourself. Systems make promises small enough to keep, and frequent enough to matter. This is why systems quietly rebuild self-trust. People who fail repeatedly at goals often lose faith in themselves. They stop believing their own intentions. Over time, this erosion of self-trust becomes the biggest barrier to change. Systems repair this damage. They lower the bar for success while raising the frequency of success. Each successful repetition becomes evidence. Over time, identity shifts from "I can't stick to things" to "I show up." This identity shift is more valuable than any single outcome. Goals also distort time perception. They make people impatient. When progress feels slow, frustration grows. This impatience leads to shortcuts, extremes, and burnout. Systems counteract this by focusing attention on today's action, not tomorrow's result. When today is enough, impatience fades. Systems also eliminate the false finish line. Goals imply that there is an endpoint where effort stops and life begins. But life does not work that way. There is no permanent arrival. There is only ongoing maintenance. Health must be maintained. Skill must be practiced. Focus must be protected. Systems acknowledge this reality. Goals deny it. This is why people who live by systems appear calm. They are not chasing. They are maintaining. Maintenance is sustainable. Chasing is exhausting. Another subtle benefit of systems is that they reduce fear of failure. When success is defined as following the system, failure loses its power. Missing a result does not mean the system failed. It means the system needs adjustment. This reframing encourages experimentation. People try new approaches without fear of judgment. They learn faster. They adapt better. Goals discourage experimentation because failure feels costly. Systems encourage learning because feedback is expected. Systems also decentralize responsibility. Instead of blaming yourself, you evaluate the structure. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "What's wrong with the system?" This shift protects mental health. It replaces self-criticism with problem-solving. Another advantage of systems is that they scale. Once a system works in one area, the logic transfers. You begin to think in systems rather than outcomes. This mindset improves every area of life. You stop asking how to force results and start asking how to design environments. Environment design is the practical expression of systems thinking. It recognizes that behavior is shaped by context more than character. Systems manipulate context in your favor. This is why small environmental changes produce large behavioral shifts. Systems do not rely on self-control. They rely on structure. Goals assume you will act correctly in any environment. Systems assume you will act according to the environment you are in. This assumption is more accurate. And accuracy produces consistency. When people say they lack discipline, what they often lack is a system that makes discipline unnecessary. They are relying on strength where structure would work better. Systems turn effort into default behavior. Once systems are in place, motivation becomes optional. Action no longer depends on how inspired you feel. It depends on whether the system exists. This is why people who succeed long-term rarely talk about motivation. They talk about routines, schedules, setups, and habits. They talk about what they built, not how they felt. The ultimate benefit of systems is freedom. Freedom from constant decision-making. Freedom from emotional swings. Freedom from repeated self-negotiation. Goals promise freedom in the future. Systems create freedom in the present. This is the real message behind this insight. Change does not come from aiming higher. It comes from building better foundations. When systems are strong, results follow naturally. When systems are weak, goals collapse repeatedly. This is why you do not rise to the level of your goals. Goals are aspirations. You fall to the level of your systems because systems are reality. Once you accept this, the path forward becomes clearer. Instead of chasing outcomes, you start building processes. Instead of forcing discipline, you start designing behavior. Instead of hoping for change, you start engineering it. And engineered change lasts. How systems are built in real life. Understanding that systems matter is only the beginning. The real challenge lies in building systems that survive contact with everyday life. Most systems fail not because they are poorly designed in theory, but because they are unrealistic in practice. People often design systems for their ideal selves. They imagine perfect mornings, uninterrupted schedules, high energy, and strong motivation. These systems look good on paper, but collapse under real conditions. Real life is noisy, unpredictable, and demanding. Systems that ignore this reality do not last. Effective systems are designed for low-energy days, busy schedules, emotional fluctuations, and unexpected disruptions. They assume imperfection. They plan for resistance. This is the first principle of real systems. They must work even when you don't feel like working. A system is not a schedule you follow when everything goes right. It is a structure that holds you steady when things go wrong. The foundation of any system is clarity. Not clarity about goals, but clarity about actions. Vague intentions produce vague behavior. Clear actions produce repeatable behavior. Many people say things like, "I'll work out more, I'll read regularly," or "I'll be more focused." These statements are intentions, not systems. They do not specify when, where, or how behavior will occur. Systems require specificity. They answer concrete questions. What exactly will I do? When will I do it? Where will it happen? How long will it take? This specificity reduces friction. The brain resists ambiguity because ambiguity requires decision-making. When a system removes the need to decide, action becomes easier. The next principle is simplicity. Complex systems fail quickly. They demand too much attention and energy. Simplicity survives stress. A good system has the smallest number of steps necessary to produce the desired behavior. Every extra step is a point of failure. Every unnecessary rule increases resistance. This is why people who overhaul their lives overnight often fail. They introduce too many changes at once. The system becomes fragile. Effective systems grow incrementally. They start small and expand gradually. They allow competence and confidence to build together. Another critical element is consistency of context. Behavior is strongly tied to environment. The same action performed in the same place at the same time becomes automatic faster than an action performed inconsistently. This is why routines matter. They reduce cognitive load by creating predictable cues. Over time, the cue alone triggers the behavior. For example, reading every night in the same chair creates a stronger habit than reading at random times in random places. The environment becomes part of the system. Systems that ignore environmental cues rely too heavily on memory and willpower. Systems that leverage environment create automaticity. The next principle is visibility. Systems fail when they are invisible. If you forget the system exists, it cannot guide behavior. This is why visual cues are powerful. A notebook on the desk, shoes near the door, a calendar on the wall. These are not reminders in the traditional sense. They are prompts embedded in the environment. Visibility reduces reliance on internal motivation. It externalizes intention. Another important principle is measurability. Systems should provide feedback. Without feedback, behavior feels disconnected from progress. When progress feels invisible, motivation fades. Measurable systems do not require complex tracking. Even simple confirmation, did I do it or not, is enough. The key is that the system provides evidence. Evidence builds trust. Trust builds consistency. Time boundaries are another essential component. Open-ended systems often fail because they feel overwhelming. Clear start and end points make action manageable. For example, committing to write every day is vague and intimidating. Committing to write for 20 minutes is specific and contained. Time boundaries reduce resistance. Systems should also be designed to scale. On high-energy days, you can do more. On low-energy days, you can do less. But the core behavior remains intact. This scalability protects consistency. It prevents all-or-nothing thinking. It allows progress under varying conditions. One of the most overlooked aspects of systems is recovery. Systems must include recovery by design. Without recovery, burnout is inevitable. This does not mean rest is optional. It means rest is planned. A system that does not account for rest will eventually collapse. Recovery is not the opposite of progress. It is part of progress. Another crucial element is alignment with values. Systems that conflict with personal values create internal resistance. Over time, this resistance erodes consistency. When systems reflect what matters to you, behavior feels meaningful. Meaning sustains effort when results are delayed. This is why copying someone else's system often fails. Their values are not yours. Their constraints are not yours. Their environment is not yours. Effective systems are personal. They are tailored to your life, not borrowed from someone else's highlight reel. Finally, systems must be adjustable. No system is perfect from the start. The goal is not to design a flawless system, but to design one that can evolve. Adjustability requires reflection. Periodic review allows you to identify friction points and improve structure. This turns the system into a learning mechanism rather than a rigid rulebook. Systems that adapt survive. Systems that resist change break. In real life, systems are living structures. They grow, shrink, and shift with circumstances. They are not static plans. They are dynamic frameworks. This is what separates systems that last from systems that fail. Once a system is built, the real challenge begins, keeping it alive under pressure. Many systems work well during calm periods but collapse during stress. This is not a design flaw, it is a misunderstanding of how human behavior responds to pressure. Under stress, the brain seeks familiarity. It reverts to default patterns. This means that any system that only works when life is smooth is incomplete. A real system must be stress-compatible. Stress reveals whether a system is truly embedded or merely aspirational. This is why habit change often fails during busy seasons, emotional difficulty, or unexpected disruptions. The system has not yet become the default response. It still requires conscious effort. And conscious effort is the first thing stress eliminates. To survive stress, systems must be anchored to cues that do not disappear. Time-based cues often fail under stress because schedules change. Emotion-based cues fail because emotions fluctuate. The strongest systems are anchored to physical and environmental cues. For example, tying a habit to an existing routine, such as doing a short review immediately after brushing your teeth, creates a stable anchor. The existing routine acts as a trigger that survives stress. This principle is often overlooked. People try to add new behaviors without attaching them to existing ones. This creates orphan habits that struggle to survive. Systems also fail when they demand too much cognitive effort. Under stress, cognitive bandwidth shrinks. Decisions become exhausting. Systems that require planning, optimization, or reflection during execution often fail in high-pressure environments. This is why simplicity is not just a design preference. It is a survival strategy. A system should be executable even when attention is low. Ideally, it should feel almost mechanical. The fewer decisions required, the more resilient the system. Another factor that determines whether systems survive is emotional neutrality. Systems that carry emotional weight, guilt, pressure, or self-judgment, become fragile under stress. The mind seeks relief, and abandoning the system provides immediate relief. This is why harsh self-talk destroys consistency. It ties the system to negative emotion. Over time, the habit becomes associated with stress rather than progress. Effective systems are emotionally light. They do not punish failure. They normalize imperfection. They treat missed days as data, not disasters. This emotional neutrality allows quick recovery. Instead of spiraling after a miss, the system resumes quietly. Recovery speed is a more important metric than streak length. Another key element of real-world systems is redundancy. Redundancy means having multiple ways to succeed. If one path fails, another remains. For example, if your system depends entirely on morning routines, what happens when mornings collapse? A redundant system allows for an alternative, perhaps a shorter evening version. Redundancy prevents single points of failure. It increases resilience. Many people design brittle systems that depend on ideal conditions. These systems fail quickly. Robust systems anticipate failure and plan alternatives. Another overlooked aspect is feedback timing. Systems that provide immediate feedback are more likely to stick. Delayed feedback weakens reinforcement. This does not mean the results must be immediate. It means the acknowledgement of effort should be immediate. Checking off a task, marking a habit, or completing a small ritual provides closure. Closure signals completion to the brain. Completion feels satisfying. Satisfaction reinforces repetition. Systems without closure feel endless. Endless effort drains motivation. Another factor is friction management. Systems must reduce friction for desired behaviors and increase friction for undesired ones. This is not about self-control. It is about design. For example, placing distractions out of reach increases friction. Making tools easily accessible reduces friction. Over time, behavior follows the path of least resistance. People often try to fight bad habits with willpower. Systems quietly redirect behavior through friction. This is one of the most powerful advantages of systems. They work even when you are tired. Another reason systems survive is that they create rhythm. Rhythm stabilizes behavior. It creates predictability. Predictability reduces anxiety. When life feels chaotic, systems provide structure. This is why people often return to habits during stressful times, not because they are disciplined, but because structure feels safe. Systems become emotional anchors. However, this only happens when systems are flexible. Rigid systems break under chaos. Flexible systems bend and recover. Flexibility means adjusting intensity, not abandoning structure. Another important element is ownership. Systems imposed from outside rarely last. Systems chosen internally have greater longevity. Ownership creates commitment. Commitment fuels consistency. This is why externally imposed goals often fail. They lack ownership. Systems that align with personal reasons are stronger. Finally, systems require periodic renewal. Over time, routines can become stale. Engagement fades. Renewal introduces novelty without destroying structure. This can be as simple as changing location, adjusting timing, or refining the process. Renewal keeps the system alive. Real-life systems are not static. They evolve with you. The people who succeed long-term are not those with perfect systems. They are those who keep adjusting imperfect ones. The final test of any system is longevity. Many systems work for weeks, some for months, but very few survive years. The difference between temporary systems and lasting systems lies in how they integrate with identity, environment, and life transitions. A system that exists only as a routine is fragile. A system that becomes part of identity is resilient. This is why the strongest systems eventually stop feeling like systems. They fade into the background. They become normal. When behavior no longer feels like an effortful choice, it has crossed the threshold into identity. This transition does not happen through force. It happens through repetition in stable contexts. Each repetition signals reliability to the brain. Over time, reliability becomes expectation. Expectation becomes identity. At this stage, missing the behavior feels uncomfortable. Not because of guilt, but because something feels incomplete. The system has become part of the self. However, reaching this stage requires protecting the system during vulnerable periods. Life transitions are the most dangerous moments for systems. New jobs, new environments, emotional shifts, and schedule changes all disrupt cues. This is where many long-standing habits quietly disappear. To protect systems during transitions, the goal is not to preserve performance, but to preserve presence. Doing less is better than doing nothing. A reduced version of the system keeps identity intact. For example, if your system involves long sessions, during transition periods you preserve a minimal version. The action is smaller, but the signal remains, I still show up. This signal is critical. Identity survives through signals. Another element of longevity is forgiveness. Systems that demand perfection eventually collapse. The mind resists constant pressure. Forgiveness allows continuity without emotional damage. Forgiveness does not mean lowering standards. It means recognizing that consistency is measured over time, not days. Systems that include forgiveness recover faster. Recovery speed is the true marker of strength. Another overlooked factor is boredom. Repetition eventually becomes dull. When boredom sets in, many people abandon systems, mistaking boredom for failure. In reality, boredom is a sign that the system is working. The behavior has become predictable. Predictability is what creates automaticity. Successful people do not avoid boredom. They tolerate it. This tolerance is a skill. It separates those who stay consistent from those who constantly seek novelty. However, boredom must be managed. Small variations within the system keep engagement alive without breaking structure. Changing the environment slightly, adjusting the order of tasks, or introducing small challenges refreshes the experience. This balance between stability and variation keeps systems alive. Another factor that determines longevity is feedback relevance. Systems that produce meaningful feedback reinforce themselves. Systems that feel disconnected from impact lose momentum. This is why systems tied to values last longer than systems tied to metrics alone. Values provide emotional feedback. Metrics provide informational feedback. Both matter. When a system aligns with values, effort feels justified even when results are slow. Another critical aspect is environment renewal. Over time, environments drift. Clutter accumulates. Tools become inaccessible. Distractions multiply. Systems weaken. Periodic environment resets restore system strength. Removing friction and restoring cues keeps behavior aligned. This maintenance is not dramatic. It is quiet and practical. But it matters. Systems also require honest evaluation. When a system stops working, the solution is not to abandon it immediately. The solution is to diagnose. What changed? What added friction? What removed cues? This diagnostic approach prevents unnecessary abandonment. People who fail long-term often mistake temporary friction for permanent failure. They quit instead of adjust. Adjustment is the essence of systems thinking. Another reason systems last is that they shift the source of motivation. Instead of relying on emotional peaks, systems rely on structure. Structure outlasts emotion. This does not eliminate emotion. It stabilizes it. When systems are strong, motivation becomes a bonus, not a requirement. This is why people with strong systems appear disciplined. In reality, they have reduced the need for discipline. Discipline is expensive. Systems are efficient. The final element of longevity is trust. Trust that the system works even when progress feels slow. Trust that repetition compounds. Trust that small actions accumulate. This trust is built through experience, not belief. It emerges naturally when systems are followed long enough to produce evidence. Once trust is established, consistency becomes easier. Doubt fades. Effort lightens. At this point, the system no longer feels like something you maintain. It feels like something that supports you. This is the ultimate goal of systems. Not control, but support. Systems are not cages. They are scaffolding. They hold you steady while you build something lasting. When built correctly, systems free you from constant decision-making. They protect you from your own fluctuations. They make progress predictable. This is why lasting change does not come from setting higher goals. It comes from building better systems. And once systems are in place, success stops feeling uncertain. It becomes a matter of time. How systems compound over time. The power of systems does not reveal itself quickly. In fact, the greatest weakness of systems is also their greatest strength. They work slowly at first. This delay is why most people abandon systems long before they begin to show results. Humans are wired to respond to immediate feedback. We are drawn to actions that reward us quickly and discouraged by efforts that feel invisible. Systems, by design, operate in the invisible phase for a long time. This creates a dangerous mismatch between effort and reward. In the early stages, systems feel unrewarding. Progress is happening, but it is buried beneath the surface. There are no dramatic results, no visible transformation, no external validation. Only repetition. Most people interpret this silence as failure. But this silence is not failure. It is incubation. Every system compounds. Not linearly, but exponentially. The difficulty is that exponential growth looks flat in the beginning. The curve stays low for a long time before it rises sharply. This is why small habits appear meaningless at first. Reading a few pages. Writing a few lines. Saving a small amount. Training briefly. None of it feels impactful in isolation. But systems are not judged by individual actions. They are judged by accumulation. Each repetition adds a layer. Each layer strengthens the structure. Over time, the weight of accumulated effort reaches a tipping point. This tipping point is often mistaken for sudden success. In reality, it is delayed success. The work was done quietly. The reward arrived loudly. This misunderstanding causes people to chase breakthroughs instead of building foundations. They look for moments instead of momentum. Momentum is what systems create. Momentum does not require constant intensity. It requires consistency. Even low-intensity actions compound if they are repeated without interruption. This is why consistency beats intensity over time. Intensity burns energy. Consistency builds leverage. Leverage is the hidden force behind compounding systems. Leverage allows small inputs to produce large outputs. But leverage takes time to develop. Early on, effort feels heavy because leverage is low. Later, effort feels lighter because leverage has increased. This shift is subtle but powerful. Consider how skills compound. In the beginning, learning feels slow and frustrating. Progress is barely noticeable. But once fundamentals are mastered, improvement accelerates. New knowledge connects to existing knowledge. Learning becomes faster. This is compounding in action. The same applies to habits. Early repetitions lay groundwork. Later repetitions build upon that groundwork. The system begins to carry itself. Another aspect of compounding systems is error reduction. As systems repeat, mistakes decrease. Movements become smoother. Decisions become automatic. Energy is conserved. This reduction in friction increases output without increasing effort. This is why experienced individuals appear effortless. They are not working harder. They are benefiting from years of compounding. Compounding also applies emotionally. Confidence builds slowly through repeated success. Each small win strengthens belief. Over time, belief becomes stable. Stable belief fuels further consistency. This feedback loop is critical. Systems that produce internal rewards last longer than those that rely solely on external outcomes. When effort itself becomes rewarding, consistency becomes sustainable. Another misunderstood element of compounding is that it applies equally to negative systems. Bad habits compound just as powerfully as good ones. Small negative actions accumulate quietly until they create visible damage. This is why ignoring small problems is dangerous. Small inefficiencies grow. Small distractions expand. Small excuses multiply. Systems are neutral. They amplify whatever is repeated. This neutrality makes systems dangerous if left unmanaged, but incredibly powerful when designed intentionally. One of the most important lessons about compounding systems is patience. Systems demand patience before they deliver momentum. This patience is rare. Most people want confirmation before commitment. Systems require commitment before confirmation. This reversal is uncomfortable. Those who persist through the early flat phase gain access to compounding. Those who quit never experience it. This is why long-term success looks unfair. It is not distributed evenly. It favors those who stay consistent when results are invisible. Another key point is that compounding is not smooth. Progress often comes in bursts. Long periods of stability are followed by sudden jumps. These jumps create the illusion of overnight success. But overnight success is simply delayed visibility. Understanding this protects against discouragement. When progress stalls, it is not a signal to stop. It is often a signal that compounding is still underway. Systems require faith grounded in logic, not emotion. Logic says that repeated actions produce cumulative effects. Emotion says that lack of immediate reward means failure. Systems reward logic. This is why tracking systems rather than outcomes is useful. Tracking repetitions reinforces identity and consistency, even when results lag. Tracking also creates evidence. Evidence builds trust. Trust fuels patience. Another important aspect of compounding is alignment. Systems compound faster when aligned with values and identity. When actions reflect who you believe you are, resistance decreases. Lower resistance means higher repetition. Higher repetition accelerates compounding. This alignment creates a flywheel effect. Each repetition strengthens identity. Identity strengthens consistency. Consistency accelerates compounding. This loop is difficult to stop once established. Compounding also creates resilience. When systems are well established, disruptions have less impact. Momentum carries behavior forward even during difficult periods. This resilience is why systems outperform goals during stress. Goals collapse under pressure. Systems adapt. Over time, systems reshape expectations. What once felt difficult becomes normal. Normal becomes easy. Easy becomes automatic. At this stage, progress feels inevitable. This inevitability is the reward of compounding systems. But reaching this stage requires enduring the early phase where effort feels disconnected from reward. Most people never do. They underestimate the time required for systems to compound. They overestimate what should happen quickly. They quit before momentum builds. Those who succeed do not see themselves as exceptional. They simply stayed longer. They stayed when it was boring. They stayed when no one noticed. And eventually, the system noticed them. One of the most misleading ideas about progress is the belief that effort and results should move together. People expect effort today to produce visible improvement tomorrow. When this does not happen, they assume the system is broken. In reality, systems operate on a delayed reward structure. This delay creates a psychological gap between action and outcome. Inside this gap, doubt grows. Motivation weakens. Attention shifts elsewhere. The system is abandoned not because it failed, but because its timing did not match expectation. Understanding this gap is critical for long-term consistency. Every system compounds beneath the surface long before it shows outward signs of success. During this period, the most important work is invisible. Neural pathways are forming. Skills are stabilizing. Identity is reshaping. But none of this feels tangible. This invisibility is why most people never experience the true power of systems. They leave during the quiet phase. The quiet phase is where systems are tested. Those who stay during this phase develop an advantage that compounds faster than any single habit. That advantage is tolerance for delayed gratification. Tolerance for delay is a skill. It is not a personality trait. It is built through experience. Each time you continue despite slow feedback, you strengthen this skill. Each time you quit early, you weaken it. Over time, those with high tolerance for delay outperform those with higher talent but lower patience. This explains why many highly capable individuals fail to achieve long-term success. They expect immediate validation. When it does not arrive, they redirect their energy elsewhere. Systems punish impatience and reward endurance. Another critical aspect of compounding systems is the accumulation of margin. Margin refers to the buffer between effort and capacity. When systems compound, capacity increases while effort remains stable. This creates surplus. Surplus allows flexibility. It allows recovery. It allows adaptation. It allows mistakes without collapse. People without systems operate at the edge of capacity. Any disruption causes failure. People with systems operate with margin. Disruptions are absorbed. This margin is invisible but powerful. Consider how physical conditioning works. Early training produces exhaustion. Later training produces strength. The same activity that once drained energy begins to generate energy. This reversal is the result of compounding. Mental systems follow the same pattern. Initially, focus feels difficult. Over time, focus becomes accessible. Eventually, distraction feels uncomfortable. This shift is profound. It changes how effort is experienced. Another overlooked feature of compounding systems is how they simplify decision-making. Early on, decisions require conscious effort. Over time, systems automate decisions. Automation frees cognitive resources. Freed resources can be redirected toward creativity, strategy, or recovery. This efficiency multiplies output without increasing strain. Compounding also stabilizes behavior across emotional states. When systems are weak, behavior fluctuates with mood. When systems are strong, behavior persists regardless of mood. This stability is a competitive advantage. Most people overestimate how much emotional energy they will have in the future. Systems remove reliance on emotional energy. This is why disciplined individuals appear emotionally steady. Their behavior is not driven by emotion. It is driven by structure. Another dimension of compounding is social reinforcement. As systems become visible, external expectations form. Others begin to associate you with certain behaviors. This external identity reinforces internal identity. When others expect consistency, deviation becomes harder. This social friction protects systems. This effect grows slowly but powerfully. It turns personal habits into reputational traits. Reputation compounds too. Another compounding effect is confidence calibration. Systems provide accurate feedback over time. This feedback corrects self-perception. Overconfidence decreases. Underconfidence decreases. Reality replaces illusion. This calibrated confidence improves decision-making. Decisions become grounded in evidence rather than emotion. Evidence is the currency of systems. Another critical element is recovery compounding. Systems that include recovery prevent burnout. Burnout destroys compounding. Recovery preserves it. This is why sustainable systems outperform aggressive ones. Aggression accelerates short-term output but collapses long-term consistency. Consistency compounds. Intensity spikes. Compounding also increases adaptability. As systems mature, they become modular. Parts can be adjusted without breaking the whole. This modularity allows evolution without collapse. Rigid systems fail under change. Flexible systems survive. Another important factor is time horizon expansion. As systems compound, perspective shifts. Short-term fluctuations matter less. Long-term trajectory matters more. This shift reduces anxiety. Anxiety thrives on short time horizons. Systems extend horizons. With extended horizons, patience increases. With patience, compounding accelerates. This virtuous cycle explains why experienced individuals appear calm under pressure. They trust their systems. Trust reduces reactivity. Reduced reactivity improves judgment. Improved judgment strengthens systems. This loop reinforces itself. Compounding also applies to error correction. Early systems are imperfect. Mistakes happen. Over time, feedback refines systems. This refinement increases precision. Precision reduces wasted effort. Reduced waste increases efficiency. Efficiency accelerates compounding. Another subtle effect is narrative compounding. Over time, your story changes. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. This narrative influences future behavior. Narratives are powerful motivators. They shape expectation. Expectation shapes action. Systems rewrite narratives slowly but permanently. This is why lasting change feels identity deep rather than behavior surface. Another reason systems compound effectively is that they reduce exposure to temptation. Structured environments limit choice. Limited choice reduces error. This is why simple systems outperform complex ones. Complexity invites failure. Simplicity compounds. Simplicity is not weakness. It is strength. Finally, compounding systems create asymmetry. Small advantages accumulate into large gaps. Over time, the difference between those with systems and those without becomes dramatic. This gap is not due to talent. It is due to time. Time rewards systems. Those who respect time build systems. Those who chase shortcuts fight time. Time always wins. The final stage of compounding is when progress stops feeling uncertain and starts feeling inevitable. This is the stage most people never reach, not because it is rare, but because it requires staying consistent long after the excitement has faded. At this stage, systems no longer depend on motivation, discipline, or emotional energy. They are sustained by structure and identity. Behavior happens because it is the natural outcome of the system, not because of conscious effort. This is where systems become self-reinforcing. Self-reinforcement occurs when the output of a system feeds back into the system itself. Progress strengthens belief. Belief strengthens consistency. Consistency strengthens progress. The loop closes. Once this loop is active, stopping feels harder than continuing. This is the point where people say things like, "I don't even think about it anymore," or, "This is just how I live now." These statements are not exaggerations. They are descriptions of systems that have fully compounded. However, reaching this stage requires surviving the long middle phase where effort feels repetitive and reward feels distant. This middle phase is the true barrier to compounding. The middle phase is uncomfortable because novelty has worn off, but mastery has not yet arrived. There is nothing new, and nothing impressive. Only repetition. Most people quit here. Those who do not quit develop an unfair advantage. This advantage is not talent or intelligence. It is persistence during boredom. Boredom is not the enemy of progress. It is the gateway to mastery. Mastery does not come from excitement. It comes from repetition without resistance. This is why systems outperform inspiration. Inspiration is short-lived. Systems are indifferent to mood. Another important feature of fully compounded systems is that they protect against regression. When behavior is identity-based and system-driven, lapses do not spiral into collapse. A missed day does not turn into a missed week. A missed week does not turn into abandonment. The system absorbs disruption and restores itself. This resilience is critical. Without systems, mistakes feel personal. With systems, mistakes feel procedural. Problems are solved, not judged. This mindset preserves momentum. Fully compounded systems also change how failure is perceived. Failure is no longer evidence of inadequacy. It is information. Information improves systems. This shift reduces fear. Fear destroys consistency. Systems eliminate fear by replacing judgment with adjustment. Another benefit of compounding is reduced decision fatigue. When systems are established, fewer choices need to be made. Fewer choices mean less cognitive drain. This preservation of mental energy allows attention to be focused on higher-level decisions rather than repetitive ones. This is why highly productive individuals often appear relaxed. Their systems carry the weight of routine decisions. Compounding also creates clarity. When systems are stable, outcomes become predictable. Predictability reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety improves focus. Focus strengthens systems. This positive loop reinforces itself over time. Another critical aspect of compounding is that it multiplies opportunity. Consistency increases visibility. Visibility attracts opportunities. Opportunities reward consistency. This effect is slow at first but accelerates rapidly once momentum builds. Many people believe opportunities come first and systems second. In reality, systems come first and opportunities follow. Compounding also reshapes expectations. When progress becomes steady, patience increases. When patience increases, impulsive decisions decrease. This restraint protects systems from disruption. Another subtle but powerful effect is credibility. When systems produce consistent output, trust forms. Others trust your reliability. You trust yourself. Self-trust is one of the most underrated outcomes of systems. Without self-trust, ambition collapses under doubt. With self-trust, ambition becomes sustainable. Systems create self-trust through evidence, not affirmation. Another benefit of compounding is alignment. Over time, systems eliminate behaviors that conflict with values. When values and actions align, internal friction decreases. Lower friction increases repetition. Higher repetition accelerates compounding. This alignment is why well-designed systems feel natural rather than forced. At this stage, change no longer feels like change. It feels like expression. This is the deepest level of habit formation. Another important aspect is that compounded systems allow long-term thinking. When daily behavior is handled by systems, attention shifts to strategy rather than survival. This strategic perspective is where significant growth happens. People without systems spend energy maintaining consistency. People with systems spend energy improving direction. Direction matters only when consistency exists. Another key insight is that compounding systems are anti-fragile. Stress does not destroy them. It strengthens them. Each challenge tests the system. Each test improves it. Over time, the system becomes more resilient than the individual who built it. This is why systems outlive motivation. The final outcome of compounding is freedom. Freedom from constant self-negotiation. Freedom from repeated failure. Freedom from emotional dependence. Systems create freedom by removing the need to rely on willpower. This freedom is not passive. It is earned through consistency. The tragedy is that most people are one compounding cycle away from transformation, but they quit before the cycle completes. They never see how close they were. They never experience the moment when effort turns into momentum. They never feel the relief of behavior becoming automatic. But those who stay do. And once they do, they realize that success was never about aiming higher. It was about building something stable and letting time do the work. That is the true power of systems.